Good evening, Rock Hard Caucus Patreon subscribers. Welcome back to Doughbrain Book Club. This is a podcast series where we read, review, and analyze the works of Joseph Doughbrain, an Iowa City resident. It's the most neutral term I could come up with.
Yeah, that is perfectly neutral. Excellent work.
Yeah. And now we are reading a book of essays that Joseph released in 2012 called Seldom Right, but Never in Doubt. And these are essays that it spans a pretty long period of time. I believe he wrote some of these as early as 1997, and some of them as late as 2012 when the book was published. I'm here with Stella. It's just us again. People are scared of this book, I think.
Rightfully so. No one wants to join a Spare Book Club. And, I think that Justin has gotten a lot of sass because he seems especially interested in exploring this sick, twisted brain. But
brain of dough. A sick, twisted, like a garlic breadstick.
Like a pretzel. But you know what? I have to admit, I'm all in.
It's intriguing, right?
Yeah, I want to board this train, baby. Let's go.
The Doughbrain train. The dough train.
Oh my gosh, that's so interesting. I'm glad that you reminded me of the date range that these were written and published because as I was reading through them to prepare for today, I was like, dang. These have not aged well. Mm-hmm. And even for the time they were written, they were not very good. I guess I would have, some of the opinions he has are so, not old-fashioned, but like reflective of a weird, like maybe different cultural moments or like when things were really important. Like I think people cared more about fake fur versus
there's
if you
a
were
lot
wearing
of that
fur.
In this section,
So there's a lot of those interesting cultural touchstones that he references that even for like the late 90s, maybe they were more prevalent then, but suffice to say his opinions weren't good whenever he wrote the essays and they've only gotten less.
Yeah, he's worse now than when
valid.
He wrote this.
he's way worse. That these were the essays he saw fit to publish in 2012. Like, that was like, 10 years ago? So.
Mm-hmm. So last time Stella and I talked about this introductory essay, and that was, interesting enough. But now we're getting into like the real content of the book. He has these separated out into different sections, and the first section is Politeness and Political Correctness. So those are the subjects of today's essays. We're talking about PC culture. So that's going to be fun. Anyone who's interested in writing about political correctness probably has really interesting and like unique opinions you've never heard before, right? The first essay in this section, I wrote like a little one-sentence summary of each one to sort of frame the discussion. So the first essay is called Idol Worshipping. And about this, I said, an essay about which kinds of people we should look to as role models.
That's a great description.
Yeah. Is he saying we should set our sights lower, I think is kind of the takeaway. Like, you don't want to idolize people who are worthy of idolization because that's too high of a target.
No, it's something that we talked about a little bit during the first episode, and why I think, I'm increasingly finding Doughbrain such a fascinating figure is how, like, the opportunity to peel back a few onion layers and understand how his brain works and how he came to be the way he is. Mm-hmm. And so in this first essay, when he talks about who he admires and the folks in our culture that he he doesn't necessarily say that you should admire them, but a lot of his writing includes observations about how he thinks other people think of things. And that, I think, is really revealing as well.
That's the most revealing, yeah. What the Doughbrain thinks of a regular brain.
Yeah. So my brother he took part in this project when he was in graduate school, where basically they were scanning brains, I think with either an MRI machine or maybe a CT scanner, and they were looking for changes in the brain that would signify trauma markers in the brain. But if brains looked normal, he had to label the brain as unremarkable brain.
Well, yeah, that's not what's going on here. This is a very remarkable brain, I think.
This is an extremely remarkable brain. Yeah, it reminds me of when Homer in The Simpsons goes to a mental institution and they stamp insane on his hand, and then he's trying to scrub it off I'm sane now.
Yeah. So this is kind of this sentence here sort of exemplifies what I was saying. It would be preposterous for me to admire a successful writer whose work I don't respect, or a talented writer who can't or won't get published. Which I think is, I don't know, kind of backwards. I respect people who work hard and write something interesting, but they're struggling to find sort of mainstream financial success or whatever. He wants to look up to people who get book deals. That's more interesting to him, I guess.
Yeah, and that's something he's talked about too, specifically around writing, that the fact that he's getting paid to be a professional writer and have clients and that sort of thing, he sees that as a definite career path. But yeah, to your point, Justin, that is really interesting. There's so many examples of artists who were completely commercially unsuccessful during their time, or who their art wasn't understood or whatever, and it's only after their death that their influences and their work is really appreciated. So yeah, hot take from Doughbrain.
Yeah, I mean, most of the when I was going to school for music, most of the figures that I ended up really connecting with and having the most respect for ended up the people who died completely broke. Like Scott Joplin, for instance, the king of ragtime. He had nothing when he died, and now you hear his songs when the ice cream truck drives by. What could be a greater mark of success?
Yeah, absolutely. He made it.
So Joe lists 4 authors or writers, he calls them, whose work he admires the most. He lists H.L. Mencken, George Orwell, A.J. Liebling, and Mark Twain are the 4 that he lists.
Were you familiar with all 4 of these writers?
I mean, obviously I know Orwell and Mark Twain pretty well. Mostly I've just heard of H.L. Mencken and A.J. Liebling. I don't really know their work at all. But I do have a quote from H.L. Mencken that you will probably find interesting. What did you know about them?
Yeah, I've only ever read Orwell and Mark Twain. And Doughbrain's argument here is basically, he talks about how when it comes to writers specifically, because he considers himself a writer, his criteria for who he looks up to is very different than someone who he's able to appreciate as a idol.
Yeah.
Because he is not a boxer. So he talks about Muhammad Ali and how he's able to love Muhammad Ali.
Because it's not a one-to-one. Muhammad Ali is the best at what he does, but it's not what you are doing. So it's you won't feel that sort of same jealousy, I guess, which is an impediment to Joe. Notice that he did not list Dorothy Parker among his most admired writers.
I thought that was interesting too. Yeah, he's willing to pretend to be her. You so evocatively summed it up. He wore her skin suit and pretended to be her in his foreword. But yeah, all of his his hero writers are all dead white guys.
Yeah, instead of the dead white lady.
Yeah.
So yeah, H.L. Mencken, like, I was aware of him because he had some sort of like notorious beliefs that he expressed. For example, this is the quote that I pulled out that I found to be the most, I guess, objectionable. So this is the words of H.L. Mencken, not me. All right. I admit freely enough that by careful breeding, supervision of environment, and education extending over many generations, it might be possible to make an appreciable improvement in the stock of the American Negro, for example. But I must maintain that this enterprise would be a ridiculous waste of energy, for there is a high caste white stock ready at hand, and it is inconceivable that the Negro stock, however carefully it might be nurtured, could ever even remotely approach it. The educated Negro of today is a failure, not because he meets insuperable difficulties in life, but because he is a Negro. He is, in brief, a low-caste man, to the manner born, and he will remain inert and inefficient until 50 generations of him have lived in civilization. And even then, the superior white race will be 50 generations ahead of him. So this is like not even subtle racism, it's just like explicitly very racist.
Yeah, blatant white supremacy. Yeah, absolutely disgusting. Oh my God. While I was reading all of these essays, I was thinking about, maybe what am I going to say about this? What kind of conversation are we going to have? I just feel like I'm completely shocked by some of Doughbrain's opinions and the people that he references as looking up to. Like I find them so repulsive that I just can't even like process it. I have nothing intelligent like to say. Like that speaks for itself. And so as I kind of said, like I didn't know anything about this guy. Doughbrain basically says that he was a Nazi.
Right.
That H.L. Mencken was a Nazi.
Yeah, he's like listing like the faults of each of these men that he admires, and he says H.L. Mencken was more than slightly pro-Nazi, and it's like, well, yeah, I guess you admit it, and you still like include him as one of the most admirable writers ever.
Yeah. Oh my God. And he certainly isn't going to nitpick H.L. Mencken's use of the word Negro, which is Doughbrain's preferred term for Black people.
Yeah.
That's like, I think that's one of the most offensive essays that we've read so far.
It's pretty bad, yeah. And while we're on that subject, when he's listing each of these like the faults of the men that he looks up to, what he says about Mark Twain is that Mark Twain fought on both sides in the late unpleasantness, which is like a weird euphemism for the Civil War. And I don't really know all the details of Mark Twain's Civil War activities, but like just some brief research showed me that he enlisted as a Confederate soldier for like 2 weeks, and then as soon as it became clear like this is like a real war, he just like bailed. Which, I mean, it's bad that he was a Confederate soldier, but like I think it's like a point in his favor that he like when confronted with the reality like abandoned the Confederate Army.
I don't have much respect for anyone who honestly is from Missouri, but
right.
Especially those that joined the Confederate Army. But I might have a little bit of respect for someone who bails on the Confederate Army. Like,
yeah, a deserter is like obviously, a step above like someone who fights to the end of the Civil War on the Confederate side. That's a lot worse.
Yeah.
A little earlier, this was something I wanted to point out. So he's talking about like these are great role models, like they're too high, I can't achieve what they've achieved. He says, if I had $1 for every time I've said to myself, stop wasting your time, Doughbrain, you're never going to be that good, I could afford to have these very essays published in book form at my own expense, then buy copies myself by the thousands so as to turn the book into a bestseller. And I think he, in real life, did all of that except for the bestseller part. Like, this is a self-published book. And he did buy copies himself, because, like, they're in the libraries here, that he donated them.
Oh, my gosh. I do find his description of Muhammad Ali really interesting. He says, if ever I had a personal hero, it was a man with a tested IQ of 76 who could barely read and write, who composed dreadful verse, professed hatred for my race, and made his living by hitting people. I find it utterly impossible to explain to my own satisfaction why I have always worshipped Muhammad Ali, but I always have and always will. He was and is a god in the style of the Greek gods with flaws and limitations. I just thought that was really interesting that his personal hero is a black man who he appreciates for like his brute strength and like his physicality.
Yeah.
Whereas his like intellectual heroes are these 4 white guys, including one Nazi and one Confederate soldier. So.
Right. Yeah. Like, I mean, say what you will about Mark Twain, but he did write the N-word quite a bit.
Famously.
Yeah, I mean, you could say it's maybe justified a little bit within the context of his stories, but I don't know. It's a lot. Close listeners to our show from the beginning may remember an article that Joe wrote about the boxer Joe Louis. So he's very much like, he pays attention to boxers of history. And I think he was pretty critical of Muhammad Ali in that article, if I remember correctly. Mostly because of what he describes here as Muhammad Ali's professed hatred for my race. Which, I mean, to whatever extent that's true, it's kind of justified. Given, like, Muhammad Ali's experiences with white people.
Yes. Yeah. Or, I mean, read anything that Doughbrain's hero H.L. Mencken wrote. Like, so don't worry, dear listeners. Yes, Doughbrain also has kind words for Adolf Hitler in this essay.
Yeah.
He says, to some extent, truly dreadful people, or even essentially worthless ones, can serve as positive role models. So I think that little caveat that these people are bad, they're worthless, lets him say some extremely foul things.
This
and
next part.
which of these following people are not like the other? I will just say. Adolf Hitler, for instance, was one of the finest public speakers of the 20th century. I mean, you gotta give it up for Hitler.
Yeah,
oh my God.
I highlight in the PDF like stuff that I want to read. And I cut this part off here. Let me say it. To some extent, truly dreadful people, or even essentially worthless ones, can serve as positive role models. Adolf Hitler, for instance. And then you just cut it off there, and it's even better without the rest of the sentence.
Say what you will about Hitler, but he gave a good speech. No one ever said he gave a bad speech. Makes you thonk.
Yeah, that's always like the dumb smart guy thing to say about Hitler. Like, I mean, how else would he have had all of Germany in his thrall if he wasn't such a hypnotic speaker?
Yeah.
Like, that's not what happened. It's not that he had like magical powers of oratory.
So, after Doughbrain says that Adolf Hitler was one of the best public speakers of the last century, he follows with, any orator would benefit from studying his techniques. What the fuck?
Yeah. How much time have you spent studying the techniques of Adolf Hitler, Joe?
I'm just listening to his speeches for the techniques. Yeah.
Techniques such as shouting and like pounding your fists. Yeah, it takes a lot of studious observation to pick that up.
Yeah, I'm trying to learn his skills. Also, am I an anti-Semite? Yes, but unrelated.
not as much of an anti-Semite as Adolf Hitler.
Doughbrain continues. King Edward VIII of England, later the Duke of Windsor, was one of the shallowest, stupidest, most selfish men ever to blight a royal throne. But he sure knew how to dress.
Yeah, Joe has a weird sort of focus on like men's fashion also that pops up from time to time.
Yes. I wonder why Doughbrain considers King Edward VIII so shallow and stupid and selfish. He abdicated the throne to marry Wallace Simpson, American divorcee, Nazi sympathizer, as probably Edward VIII was as well. So it like, does Doughbrain just like not appreciate like that dereliction of duty? Does he hate divorced women? Like that's interesting to me, like how reviled he considers King Edward VIII. I was thinking of Hitler.
I was thinking of Henry VIII. I don't know my British history very well. Yeah, you know Henry VIII, the guy who like killed all his wives.
But he looked great while doing it, baby.
Yeah. Well, the most important one though is the last sentence. Yeah, part of that paragraph.
This is the paragraph. The people who are worthless, but do have some positive traits that someone may choose to emulate. So, number 1, Hitler. Number 2, King Edward VIII. Number 3, Madonna, whom some people consider a talentless, pretentious, grotesque, must at least be admired for her drive and her tireless self-promotion.
Yeah. It's like, yes, who some people consider, like, is it just a weaselly way for him to say he doesn't like Madonna?
Oh, he does not like Madonna.
Yeah.
Yeah, but hard worker. She's a hard worker.
Yeah, like she has an agent. She knows how to do publicity. That's what's there to admire in her.
I do think maybe there's this boomer idea of like Madonna would do anything to achieve her level of fame because like she was sexually promiscuous and she thought like she wasn't ashamed about it.
Yeah, they criticize her for like that erotic coffee table book she did, and like
sex.
the time she kissed Britney Spears on TV, right? Was that it was Christina Aguilera, maybe? It was, I don't know.
She was the other. She kissed them both that night.
Really?
She kissed Britney first, and then she immediately kissed Christina Aguilera. No one remembers the Christina Aguilera kiss. Everyone
except me, apparently.
Yeah, that was the one that really stuck in your mind, huh? Let me just fact check myself on that. I've said a lot of untrue things on the podcast, but I think I'm right about this one.
Yeah. I remember a lot of people like our parents' ages when that happened being like, oh, she loves attention. That's why she's kissing other women on television.
Yeah. Did you see those photos Madonna recently posted? I mean, she's extremely problematic. She's posted some weird, like, racist stuff about her.
Yeah, there's some weird racial stuff.
Adopted children. Mm-hmm. She also posted these photos of herself, like, basically with her, like, ass and pussy out, like, like on a bed. She looks great for 63, but you can tell that she's definitely had her entire skin suit tightened to like the point where her features are like almost unrecognizable. It works for her though.
I mean, she's done it for a long time too. Like I remember when she did like a James Bond song or something, and even back then people were like, "Wow, she's pretty old to be looking like that."
She was 45.
She's kind of mastered the techniques of looking like she's in her 20s until she dies.
Adrenochrome, right?
Well, that's got to be part of it, at least. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Did you find the fact check on the kissing?
Yeah, I was right as usual about all things
about who kissed who.
Completely useless celebrity culture. Who is Kissing?
Yeah. There was one more little thing in this essay I wanted to ask you about. We are both married people, not to each other.
Not to each other.
Yeah, we have spouses, though. We're both married.
Yes.
So he's talking about, like, role models and, like, how they can alter your behavior sometimes in negative ways. And he says, how many happily married couples must unwittingly encourage each other's worst faults by giving each other constant, unquestioning approval? Now, I only know my own marriage, like, super up close and personal. So, personally, this isn't really how we operate. We don't constantly give each other unquestioning approval. What about for you, Stella?
No, but I would like to say on record that I think the best marriages, the most happily married couples intentionally encourage each other's worst faults by giving each other constant, unquestioning approval. Yeah, that is really, yeah, no, I don't, I mean, Doughbrain's never been married. I'm sure he's thinking of a few couples in particular.
Yeah, he's just like resentful of some of his married friends, is how this reads to me, because he is a chronically single man.
Yeah, I can't think of, maybe when this example doesn't resonate with you, like if you don't know any couples that you think are unwittingly encouraging each other's like worst characteristics through their constant support and unquestioning and approval, I think that means you're that couple.
oh no.
So
yeah, it's just funny to read that from him, like with zero experience with marriage. Like he really, it happens repeatedly in this section, but he really likes to talk about stuff that's none of his business. He's not an authority on.
Yeah. I think he's such an insecure person that he sees people who are confident perhaps in themselves because they are part of a loving, supportive partnership, and he detests them and says, like, he thinks that their worst characteristics are then reinforced.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've run just about as much juice as we can out of that lemon of an essay. So
yeah. I would have already cut us off, but I was just waiting for Alan to get in here.
Well, that's a perfect example of the title of this next piece is Manners Change, Assholery Remains.
God, assholery. It's so...
It sounds like jewelry made of assholes.
Well, we can just start talking about this essay and we'll see if he jumps in the middle.
You made it sound like he's going to jump in, but he said, is it too late? I forgot. And you said, no, it's not too late. And I am noticing he did not say, okay, be right there. I think he's like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah. Well, all right. We'll see if he joins. But all right. So manners change, assholery remains. This is stuff that you've probably heard a lot if you've ever encountered libertarians on the internet. I describe this as an essay about arguments and logical fallacies. Ugh, we've all heard this song and dance before.
This one is so boring. I was so bored reading this.
Well, the sort of like logical debate bullshit is boring, but there is some personal anecdotes that are very fun. For example, I was a rather fat kid, and I am still hoping that every adult who good-naturedly poked me in the belly ended up dying of some sort of slow-acting poison that caused them to literally rot to death.
No one could accuse Doughbrain of not knowing how to turn a phrase. Yeah.
Yeah, when it comes to like wishing violence upon people, he draws from that
Nobody
frequently.
does it better. Oh yeah.
So
honestly,
yeah,
I hope that for you too, Doughbrain.
he's lived his whole life resenting these people who like called him a fat kid.
Yeah, and like did the poppin' fresh like belly poke to him.
That's
woohoo.
Yeah. I mean that's not acceptable, but I mean
No,
at some
not
point
cool.
you gotta sort of like put that stuff in the past. Like our childhoods fuck us up forever, but yeah.
Yeah.
And he actually like there's even more about his like people commenting on his dietary habits. Like he says here, so he's talking about how like manners have changed over time. Like for example, adults don't call kids fat as often as when he was a kid, but adults will like get in each other's business about food and like their healthy behavior and stuff like that. So he says here, today you can hardly eat anything in public without some busybody pointing out to you that you shouldn't be eating it. Just the other day, I was sitting at the bar of a local bistro, tucking into a nearly raw hamburger, and the person sitting next to me thought it appropriate to ask me, "Aren't you worried about the bacteria?" This I don't think is a universal experience. Like this doesn't happen to me.
It's just so interesting to me that he gets so bent out of shape by someone like obviously overstepping his boundaries.
Yeah.
And judging him for, you know, something innocuous like the rarity of his beef. But in so many subsequent essays, like I'm thinking about the one where he talks about how gay people are too flamboyant.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like, well, dude, maybe you should just like keep to yourself. You don't get an opinion.
Exactly.
And
mind your fucking business.
Yeah, shut the fuck up. You don't like that lady talking about your beef? Then like maybe don't publish an essay about how gay people who are too flamboyant are a discredit to the LGBT movement and
to their orientation.
Only the normal gay people should be allowed to exist.
He literally uses the word normal. We'll get to that essay
we'll
later.
get there.
Yeah. I'm going to let Alan in on this.
Oh, okay. Very good. Very good. Hey, Alan.
You are
you're still
muted right now.
Oh, fuck. Shit.
Hi, Alan.
Hey, everybody. Sorry, it's a real Doughbrain evening. my own Doughbrain.
Alan's here, everyone. So the rest of the episode will be joined by our friend Alan.
First time, long time.
Every time.
Did you have a chance to read the essays, Alan?
Oh, absolutely not. I just am familiar with the Doughbrain. I refuse to do any homework.
Yeah.
Let alone just in general, let alone for podcasts. So anyway, that's less about me. What about Doughbrain here?
Yeah. So we are in the middle of discussing an essay of his called "Manners Change, Assholery Remains," and this is mostly about logical fallacies.
I'm girding my loins.
So it's also sort of about how like acceptable behavior, socially acceptable behavior changes over time, but people still find ways to be rude to each other, essentially.
Cancel culture.
Well, it's a little early for that because like he probably wrote this in like the late 2000s or something, but
yeah, but like, it's always been around. Anyway,
it's the same
continue.
idea.
I haven't even heard what he's talking.
Yeah, it's the same idea, and this whole section is titled "Politeness and Political Correctness," which was, you know, the cancel culture of its day.
The precursor.
PC. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Doughbrain basically says that the reason that people are monstrous is because of a subconscious sadistic urge to give discomfort to someone who is powerless to retaliate.
And that's just like a sicko thing that they do.
This is universal human behavior.
Yeah.
We all have this.
When someone cannot fight back, that is when I feel I must do something awful to them.
Yeah. he describes this interaction that happened at work where like a coworker was wearing fur and another coworker was criticizing her for wearing fur, but that person was wearing leather shoes, and Joe pointed it out. And the leather shoe guy, he said that he started going humana 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 because he was so flustered.
Where does he work? Like old timey factory? Or?
Yeah. I was like, he works in a cartoon office.
You're say Acme.
And Joe said that the feeling he got from like owning this guy was identical to the one you feel when you physically punch the crap out of someone who richly deserves it.
I mean, is that an experience that we all have?
I'm wondering if it's an experience that Joe has ever had. I don't know if it's an
experience that Doughbrain had. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I feel like he needs that. But...
He thinks about it all the time, but I don't know.
Later in his essay about how he's a homophobe, he talks about how going to the gym and like taking out your rage on a, like, what are those big bags called that you punch?
Punching bag?
Yeah.
So for what it's worth, I thought that story was going a different direction about but
yeah, no, he says like going to the gym and punching a punching bag is like the most manly thing you can do, and it's like the most acceptable behavior to express your rage. So dude loves to punch. I think we can.
I've never been much one for punching. Justin, how about you? What's your... Have you punched and felt better, or...
I'm not much of a puncher either. One time, this guy told me that I would be a good boxer when I was like 18. And I thought, no, I wouldn't. And I never tried.
No, cool. Stella, you see, I assume he would disqualify you because you're a lady. So you would not have the same...
That. He specifically said, that's so interesting that you bring that up, Alan, because he talks about...
Not that I don't think that you wouldn't enjoy beating the shit out of someone.
I don't think I would. I am not a
depends on who it was,
person.
But if it was someone who deserved it...
I don't know. I'm not a very... Like, honestly, I am one of those, fight, flight, or freeze. I'm a freezer. And like if someone raises their voice to me, I just like shut down. I'm not a puncher.
I understand that, but I'm just saying, like, you could be.
Okay.
Like in Doughbrain's world of see, now he would discount you, but I'm saying that in his theoretical world where this is true, that you would get something from it too, unlike him.
Yeah.
I am slightly less of a shithead.
You know what? I think I might. So, honestly, I think I might agree now with Doughbrain's thesis that if you are able to fuck with someone and they can't fuck with you back, that might be a little bit satisfying, because he specifically says that he would never sock a woman on the nose.
Yeah.
And he says a man would not have such assurance that a sock on the nose would not be in play. So, could I punch Doughbrain and know that he could not punch me back?
Well,
that might be an interesting...
That'd be sweet.
I don't know if I would count on that. I mean, you've got it in writing, but do you really trust him not to hit a woman?
Yeah. He seems like he's a guy who talks a lot about his principles, but doesn't really stick by them.
Yeah.
When push comes to shove, when he gets punched in the face, the
most dangerous game.
That there's satisfaction, that he derives satisfaction from being able to mess with someone and they can't mess with him back, or was this a different context?
Well, he's saying that. I think he says that everyone feels that way, basically.
Yeah, that it's a human.
Well, I agree, because posting, right?
Yeah, I mean, he writes about posting too, actually.
Yeah, because you can mess with them, and they're like, "What are you gonna do? Post back and get mad?" Oh no.
Yeah. I want to point out that he uses the word obstreperous in this essay, which means noisy and difficult to control, which is a word I learned from Todd Blodgett's book. So it's a weird connection between these two weird guys that I
was going to say, I feel like that's a callback.
Yeah. Let me read this little section here for you. Probably our manners would improve if it were considered socially acceptable to kill anyone who uses you rudely. After all, people who have been in prison, where such is the case, often say that society behind bars is far more genteel than any they've encountered in freedom.
I wish we had Evan here because I know that he's watched a lot of episodes about people in prison, a lot of shows like 90 Days In and that kind of thing. I wonder if he would confirm that prison is a genteel place.
Yeah, it's much nicer than like not being in prison.
Yeah. People are so polite in jail.
I mean, from like the recidivism that we have in the United States, it doesn't sound like a place of growth.
Yeah. He goes on to talk about how like logical fallacies are actually a lot more effective than like real like logical arguments, which is correct, and in which case you should abandon all of your ideals about like healthy debate. And this all becomes kind of pointless. Like he talks about how... What'd you say, Alan?
I said, debate me, you coward.
Good, I'm glad I asked. He talks about like name calling, like somebody called him a crypto fascist, and it's like that was effective because everyone listening agreed that he was a fascist, even if he doesn't think he was.
And he was offended by that. I mean, what does he talk about what he considers himself politically?
I mean, he doesn't really use the word, I don't think, in this essay, but like he's a libertarian, you know?
Yeah. I mean, a fascist.
In the last essay we read, he expressed admiration for both Nazi H.L. Mencken and also Nazi Adolf Hitler. So.
I mean, I don't understand why you would write that down, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. You don't need to write that.
No.
Here's a classic. He's talking about the tactic of associating one person or organization with another far less socially acceptable person or organization in order to discount that person's argument. A correspondent of mine tried this tactic in writing the other day, referring to the Republican Party, so with Republican with a KKK in it, implying that anyone who belongs to that party, and then in parentheses, and I guess that includes Abraham Lincoln, is also a member of the Ku Klux Klan or reliably sympathetic to it. So that the classic, the party of Lincoln.
Well, also getting upset about, people like writing that shit. It's like a very childish thing to do, to America with KKK. Like, okay,
yeah. It's silly.
Guys, we get it.
Yeah.
But, it's like a fashionable online edgy thing, right? Like that's a thing that people do.
Yeah.
And to get mad about it is telling.
Oh, yeah. I bet you think that Abraham Lincoln was in the KKK?
Yeah.
Wow.
Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, well, Republicans are all racist.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? He doesn't use the word libertarian, but this is about him being a libertarian. This is a little bit longer, but it's something about his real life, which is a lot more interesting than his thoughts on logical fallacies. He's talking about thinking of a good comeback like after it's no longer effective or relevant. So one of the most memorable of those occurrences for me took place in 2009 while I was out campaigning for mayor of New York City. A personal aside, he ran as a libertarian.
He was talking about thinking of comebacks after the fact and then wrote them down. And where were these written down?
In the very essays we're reading today.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I just can't imagine writing that shit down.
Right.
Yeah.
You should feel shame.
Here's one time I got owned, and here's what I really would have said.
It's exactly like that. I was handing out leaflets and buttons in Union Square Park and was getting friendly responses from most people. At one point, I approached 2 young people who were sitting on the steps at the south end of the park, where lots of people congregate. The young woman was hanging on the man very affectionately, and I didn't get a good look at her except to register that she was very attractive.
And he's said in the past that he goes, every time he sees a woman, he goes through the process of, would I or would I not? So we know.
That was in the context of a fictional narrative, but we know for sure that that's like how he actually thinks. The man was apparently 20 or not much more, and he looked like what politically incorrect New Yorkers call a schvugarican. Okay, I'm assuming neither of you have heard that word. Schvugarican. It's spelled SHVUGARICAN. He says it's an Hispanic of color, but I wanted to Google it because I'd never seen that word before. I Googled the word. Yeah, I Googled schvugarican, and it brought up one single result. This has not happened very often when you Google a word.
This is a new spark.
Yeah. Well, actually, the one result, though, was an issue of National Lampoon from October 1975. The issue was titled...
Perfect.
The issue was titled Big Tit Contest.
Hell yeah.
And this word, schvugarican, is a word for a half-black, half-Puerto Rican person. And I'm sure it's like cool. I'm saying a racial slur when I say it, so I'm not going to say it anymore.
So that sentence was basically like, I'm doing boobs, asses, faces, and here's this person of color.
Essentially, yes.
You can see, like, in your mind's eye, what was the year? 1974?
75 was the National Lampoon.
Oh, 75. Joseph Doughbrain goes to... He sees it. He loves it. He's attracted to it. He inhales it. It becomes so lodged in his brain that he uses this slur that has appeared once in print in the history of the English language in his own writing. And he thinks about it all the time.
He came for the big tit contest and he stayed for the racism.
For the racial slurs,
yeah. He loves the slurs. I'm surprised. I'm impressed.
A tall, remarkably handsome man, well-groomed in impeccable and quite tasteful business casual attire. Brown suit, beige shirt, tan hat, no tie. Like I said, very interested in men's fashion. I made eye contact with him as I always do when I'm fixing to introduce myself to someone and offer a flyer, but before I could get a word out of my mouth, this guy gave me that hateful gangsta fisheye and the finger. I just smiled a little and said, "You're a nice fellow, aren't you?" before moving on. And 5 seconds later, it occurred to me that I should have added, graciously, "I'm sure your mother is proud of you." He could have taken that in any number of ways. Okay, so first of all,
see, I didn't.
That's not like that's not like a good burn. Like I thought of this later, it would have been so perfect.
Got his ass.
I am really struggling to understand what he means. So I'm sure your mother is proud of you. He could have taken that in any number of ways. Like, what are the ways, though?
Yeah.
But that he's like a really good two shoes and he just got this guy's ass. And this is the dumb response that he came up with. And be like, good one, guy.
Yeah.
I can think of continue to make fun of him.
Yeah. I can think of either like two different readings, like either making him feel shame because his mother wouldn't have been proud of that, or insulting his mother who would be proud of his poor behavior. Those are two ways of the any number of ways that he says it could be taken.
Yeah. I kind of like Alan's read where the guy is like, damn, he got me. I should volunteer for this man's campaign. And he should be the mayor of New York.
If he had said that, he would be the mayor of New York to this day.
Yeah. The Blasio? No.
Yeah.
Doughbrainio.
I love that this guy clocked Doughbrain and immediately was like, flipped him off and was like, yeah, get the fuck away from me. I do not want to buy what you're selling.
Like on site. Nope, get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry that Alan's going to miss this, but this story actually gets more racist. Several questions occurred to me.
Yeah.
First, why the behavior? What did he get out of it, behaving aggressively and insultingly to someone he'd only laid eyes on a few seconds before and never spoken to? I was genuinely puzzled. Second, why is that behavior apparently restricted to a certain demographic? That wasn't the first time I've met a young men who act like that in New York City, and I report it as a matter of fact, not of prejudice, that these people have invariably been Hispanic, or apparently so. Is it something to do with their culture? Don't their parents teach them better? Again, I ask not rhetorically, but because I don't know. Yeah, so every time someone's rude to him,
questions here.
It's a Hispanic person. No one of any other race treats him poorly.
Why would you write down that? Like, why would you put this anywhere? Why would you do that? Like, I just don't get that.
Yeah, most of this is not very remarkable, but he says here, my worst behavior invariably takes place on social networking sites like Facebook and MySpace.
Yeah. Yeah, he says, sometimes I can't resist the temptation to be a flaming asshole.
I mean, I have run into him online before.
Me too.
In the past. And just been a dipshit to him, and then he blocked me.
He probably wrote an essay about you.
Honor.
Yeah, I won't. Because if you fight him on his grounds, then that's not how that works.
No, he gets too much out of it.
He won't.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
that sums up this essay. Is like, people won't fight with me the way I want to fight. They just dunk on me, and then all their friends laugh at me. It's not fair.
Yeah.
He blames this a little bit on TV. And he says, this behavior doesn't just happen on midday talk shows like Jerry Springer. It also happens on quasi-official shows like Judge Judy. So do you consider Judge Judy to be a level above Jerry Springer in sophistication?
I might a little bit. I mean, she is a judge.
They're the same thing.
Yeah, I think it's the same shit.
They're the same thing.
Yeah.
She went to law school. Jerry Springer is just a disgraced politician.
He's a quasi judge.
Yeah. He blames TV being a business and needing to attract viewers for this promotion of bad behavior. So essentially, the free market is to blame, though he doesn't frame it that way. A couple more things I want to note. When people start out in a Facebook debate with him being rude just right out the gate, he says, "You'll be busy wishing you could bury a mattock blade in their shit-stuffed head."
Yeah, that's me.
That's your head.
Yeah.
The man loves his violent fantasies.
Blade?
A mattock blade, which I believe he spelled wrong. He says Mattick. I think what he meant is mattock, Mattock, which is like a pickaxe.
Okay. Yeah, that makes more sense.
And then he ends by saying, you should just be nice to people. And the last sentence is, if you can't be polite, here's a nice cool glass of STFU. Drinky, drinky. Just like the most embarrassing conclusion to any of these.
Maybe he should consider taking some himself.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Do you want to move on to apologizing, Stella?
Yes. Which I think we should do to everyone listening for covering this book.
Yeah. Essentially, this is an essay about insincere versus genuine apologies. So he's basically railing against the phrase, if I offended you, I'm sorry, because it's not a real apology.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doughbrain is, a very early advocate for impact does not equal intent.
Yeah, this is such
impact versus intent.
This is a very ironic essay given who he is and like how he interacts with the world.
Yeah.
I have a video clip for this one, which is very exciting. But I'll wait till we...
Oh, does he tell the anecdote of his, like, if I was his friend, I would be really upset with how he portrays me in this essay. He, like, says I'm, like, I look like a demon, and I, like, come to him and tell him something I'm really upset about, and Doughbrain goes out of his way to be like, well, if he says what happened really happened, then this is how it went down. Like... Doughbrain's not a supportive friend to his ugly friend.
Not at all. Yeah, I'll use his own words here. So a friend of his came to him like very distraught because somebody hurt his feelings. This is how he talks about the friend. He is in some ways like me. He's a solid, harmless, and obviously respectable citizen. But he is eccentric in his manner, and like myself is cursed with a somewhat demonic appearance.
A solid demon, that guy. Straight up.
Yeah. So this is what happened.
But obviously an upright citizen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Justin, I would like to describe you that way. Oh, that's my friend Justin. He's a straight up demon.
He's a little eccentric. He's a great citizen. And yeah, he looks like a demon.
Yeah.
So this is what happened to the the demon friend. He is a collector of netsuke, those old Japanese ivory carvings that we've all heard of. Those old Japanese ivory carvings.
Yeah,
and
that's real weeaboo stuff.
He owns some priceless specimens. The other day, so he told me, he was talking with a casual acquaintance. (Parentheses, female.
Female.
Who is also interested in netsuke. In the course of the conversation, he said, "You're welcome to come over sometime and see my collection." The acquaintance replied, "I don't know, you're so scary looking. I'm afraid of what would happen if I set foot in your lair." So he's rightfully offended by what this woman thinks of him.
Yeah.
And next time he sees her, she sort of like tries to blow it off, like, I was joking, like, what's the problem? And he's like, no, like this was really hurtful. And she says, all right, if I offended you, I'm sorry, but
I don't have a lair.
I don't have a lair. I live under a bridge.
Yeah, I'm a troll. Come on.
And this sort of gets more and more heated as he rejects her false apology. And he says, "You can tell me that your conduct was disgraceful, and you can beg my pardon, or you can fuck off." And and then Doughbrain frames it this way: if she'd been a man, or no, this is his friend. His friend says this about the woman that he was in an argument with. If she'd been a man, I'd have been justified in smashing his face in. So at the beginning, I'm thinking, yeah, I mean, it's pretty insulting for this woman to talk about this guy like that. But you get kind of a more full picture of who this guy is as the story goes on. And like, yeah, what else should she have done?
You get the impression, you get the impression too that the guy is taking it so hard because she is a woman. Like, she feels unsafe going into his house. Like, and that's what he finds really offensive. He even suggests, like, for Pete's sake, bring a boyfriend along. He'd be welcome too. So it's like there's this weird like dynamic where she's potentially like she's scared for her physical safety.
Yeah, I think what happened
Don't worry,
there
your
was
boyfriend can come too.
What happened there was he was hitting on her, but then he tries to backtrack and say like, "Oh, bring your partner too. I wasn't hitting on you."
Nothing weird.
Yeah.
You're ugly anyway, bitch. You don't want to come over and see my ivory carvings?
Yeah.
I did briefly Google them. They do look very interesting. Personally, not a fan of ivory, for one, and for two, apparently there are some suggestive ones.
Oh, so he probably has like pornographic Natsuke.
That's his collection. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, come over and look at my little penis
there
statues.
are some people that are really
made out of elephant tusks.
Yeah, and nothing wrong with the Japanese culture, but sometimes if you're, there's a particular type of man who's a grown-ass man who's really into Japanese culture, and I'm not saying anything, but I'm saying. I'm just
yeah.
Unlike Doughbrain, you would never put this in writing.
Yeah.
Your assumptions about different ethnicities.
My assumptions about ethnicities or people who really like certain types of ethnicities.
Right.
It's like more than normal.
Yeah, it's more about like an American
and
white man that's like into Asian cultures. Yeah.
And get offended that that a woman would be joking about their lair.
his hentai lair.
Right. There's a certain image that is being created in my mind, and I think I try not to judge, but it's not my style.
So Joe goes really hard in like how offensive it is to give these like fake apologies, and like anyone should be offended if they get a fake apology like this. As offended as you would be if you offered to feed a neighbor's dog while he was out of town, and he told you with a straight face, "Thanks, but you'd probably just try to have sex with it." I mean, what if you're a notorious dog fucker? Then, your neighbor would be justified in being concerned.
That's Justin's new rap.
I'm sorry, but it doesn't come out of nowhere. Like something like that.
Yeah.
It's usually not, unprompted. Yeah.
Yeah, like the dog fucking just is.
It's not the first thing that pops into someone's mind, usually. Before he ends the essay, he gives us another glimpse into his younger days. Once when I was in high school, I made a joking remark to a fat girl about her weight. I immediately felt awful about it, and I told her, "I'm so sorry. That was a really lousy, rotten thing to say, and I hope you'll forgive me." I got the impression that she was more taken aback by the apology than she had been insulted by the original jibe. She probably had never heard such an apology before. It was an all-time apology.
Oh my god.
It was
the first time that he had ever experienced anyone apologizing for the.
She's a fat girl, so people were probably not very nice to her at all.
Yeah.
So this crumb of decency that Doughbrain was able to throw her when he invented the sincere apology.
Yes. I mean, Stella, you exactly.
I love how he spins his like shitty teenage behavior into like, actually, I was like way ahead of the curve in terms of apologizing. So this is actually a good thing that I did.
I was nice to a fat girl. Now, let me tell you that she was fat.
Listen, if I hadn't called her a fat bitch, then my apology would not have had nearly the impact on her life that it did. So it's good that I called her that.
That is beautiful.
It's called growth.
Okay, do you guys want to see a quick video about this essay?
Yeah.
So
yes.
I think all right, you can see that video there, right?
Yep. There's Yale Cone.
Mm-hmm. So this is an episode of Yale Cone's PATV show from back in the day. He had Joe on the show, and this was shortly after this book was released. The name of the video, which I think Alan is reading right now, is Joseph Doughbrain on why political correctness is the enemy of freedom.
Also just Yale Cone video. Anyway, continue.
So this is a clip where Yale brings up the essay about apologizing. So I just wanted to, let us all hear this.
Ones in the book was about apologizing, and you had mentioned that something that you had done very shamefully was, I believe, when you apologize to someone, if I have offended you, I apologize, which is all sorts of, preamble kind of absolving. Where do you see as a culture, not just with people issuing apologies of that sort, but with the hypersensitivity that so many people seem to have of demanding apologies at all times? Do you think one's born out of the other? I mean, are people offering these non-apology apologies because they don't really feel like they should apologize, or is that something that preceded our present era of everyone being so pins and needles, easy to offend?
Well, now that's an interesting point, and I hadn't really considered that. I think that one reason that we don't like to apologize is because it would damage our self-esteem to admit that we were wrong. On the other hand, if we really and truly don't believe we were wrong, and if we don't believe that the other person deserves an apology, then we fear the consequences of saying, up yours, mate, you don't deserve an apology. So we come up with this non-apology, such as, right. If I offended you, in which case you're basically saying, I'm sorry that you were offended, not I'm sorry that I offended you. Crucial difference there.
Well, what do you think has led, and this you touch on this a great deal with a number of the essays in here, and as clearly in your great novel, Willie Wilden, about, political correctness and, prohibited thoughts, prohibited
words.
What a great novel. What do you think has led to our current state where I'm more than quite certain there could be somebody watching at home right now who says, a wool suit, I can't believe I'm offended that he did that to the poor lamb, or whatever
no one is watching at home right now.
And as someone who's watching, I'm not offended. I am impressed, though, because I have met both of these people.
Yeah,
I haven't met Doughbrain, but I've seen him. I've seen him with no filter.
Oh,
yeah.
Have you guys had any real run-ins?
Justin has.
Yeah, a little bit.
You've seen him in the wild.
We have spoken to each other, but he doesn't know me.
Breathing the same air?
Never.
Okay. You're not missing out.
Yeah.
He's never rated whether he would or would not fuck me personally.
You don't know that for sure.
I look forward to it someday.
I don't want to. This is already. I know way too much about him already. I would not like to know that.
Yeah, I have. I think I talked about this before.
Justin, on the other hand,
I did. So we did an I Hear I See show at Java House like years ago, and he had a book signing or like some sort of event at Prairie Lights canceled, and he moved over to Java House and like tried to like take over the space instead. And I didn't really know much about him at the time, and we let him use our PA for a little bit, which is one of the deepest regrets of my life, is that I gave that man a microphone.
If you could have really fucked with him on the PA.
Jesus.
You're missing an opportunity.
Yeah. And I've also been in like various concerts in Iowa City that he has also attended, but those were unremarkable.
He's a man about town.
The context, I believe, me seeing him was in the context of seeing shows and then having him be present and then being like, look at that fucking weirdo.
Yeah.
And then being like, oh, that's the guy that I was really mean to online. And I would do it again.
Yeah. So remarkably, the next essay here is about him attending a concert at the University of Iowa. This is called Weak Bullies, and it is an essay in which Joe fantasizes about yelling at an old lady.
The weakest of us can bully too, and such people are usually the best at getting away with it.
Yeah, that's kind of what's going on with this essay. So he writes about how he went to a concert and he sat behind a very old woman, and the situation was such that it would make more sense to stash your belongings under the seat in front of you than your own seat. So he put his gear, which he specifies included a cape, hat, and gloves.
Under this woman's chair, the woman is described as very old, perhaps 90, shrunken, frail, and palsied.
Yeah.
Painting a picture.
So, like, yeah, basically a skeleton was sitting in front of him.
A quivering skeleton.
And he has qualms with this woman.
Well, he didn't at first, but to my left sat 3 young ladies, 20 or so, who I suppose were Chinese.
He immediately walks into a situation and clocks what, like, racial group he thinks every person belongs to.
Wood, Asian, white.
Then he uses that weird slur that he got from National Lampoon. Yeah.
No, wouldn't on that one, but...
I feel like I shouldn't say it again, but I remember it.
Yeah, no.
Don't repeat it. We don't need it anymore.
Yeah. Anyway, I wonder why he chose to sat next to the 3 20-year-old Chinese ladies, huh? Well, the old lady sees one of the young Chinese women place her items under the seat in front of her and is like, hey, you should put that under your own seat. So Doughbrain is like, look at this old skeleton lady yelling at this Chinese girl. But in the moment, he didn't actually say anything to her, who he perceived to be, bullying this, minority woman next to him.
White knight in his mind.
Yes, only inside.
And it's interesting, like, the thought process that he assigns to this old woman.
Right.
So he says, like, you need to throw your weight around to assert your dominance in whatever pathetic way is left to you. Second, you need to make a young person feel ill at ease because you resent her for being young. And then also
projection.
He says something about... Yeah, he also says something about how she likely wanted to tell this young woman what to do because of the stereotype that Asian women are submissive and deferential to their elders.
Yes. It's not me thinking it, it's you. You thought all of that.
I just can't imagine ascribing all that to a situation like that.
Yeah, an exchange that was like maybe 5 words.
Yeah. And then he wrote an essay.
Yeah.
Again, like, he goes through what he could have said to her, but the young woman probably wouldn't have appreciated it, and it would have, like, probably killed the old woman. But, like, most of the essay is, like, the witty comeback.
What
like,
he
the
would have
sick
said. Yeah.
stuff he would have said to really put her in her place. Listen, lady, it's never too late to reform. Either resolve, here and now, to renounce this dickery for the rest of your life, or go quietly to your goddamn ice flow.
Yeah. I mean, thank God he didn't say this in real life, but...
I don't think you should talk to old women that way, or women in general. I mean, it seems like he should not be talking to women.
No.
Yeah. Wild.
Okay.
Of what I know about him.
Is it time to go into the next essay? Is there anything else you want to say about this one? The next one's a real doozy.
The next one's probably the worst of the whole section.
This is the worst thing I've ever read. This is the worst thing I've ever read in my entire life. It is truly foul.
So, yeah, do you want to say the title? Because probably neither of us want to say it.
Not particularly, no. Absolutely not.
I'm ready. You could text it to me. I'll read it.
I don't want to do that too.
All right, let's share the screen so Alan can see that. Oh, I
think I have
you'll
to
have
give
to do
you
it, Justin,
permission.
or give me permission.
All right, I'll say what the essay is called. This is what Joseph Doughbrain called this essay on this subject. He called it Negroes, African Americans, and Colored People. Okay, like, you shouldn't say those things. It's not as bad as he could have been in the title, but, I'd rather not have just read that.
Yeah.
Going to clip that one for sure. Anytime Joe calls me, ring a ding ding.
This is maybe like almost as bad as some of the stuff from Blodgett's book.
Yeah.
What we're about to go into.
I summed it up thusly: an essay in which Joe racistly complains that the most socially accepted word for black people changes sometimes. Something that really shouldn't bother anyone.
Yeah.
It's none of your business.
No, absolutely not.
I mean, you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Not my problem.
He goes out of his way throughout this. He uses the term Negro, American Negro. Like, that is the term that he prefers, and he makes that very, very clear throughout.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Which, I suppose that was maybe the accepted term when he was 5 years old. But, like, even he is pretty young to be saying Negro all the time, like, as his word for black people. Like, I had an old relative who was born in, like, the 30s, for whom that was, like, the socially accepted term. But, like, Joe is not that old.
Yeah, that's like my grandparents type stuff. They would be insensitive in those ways and willing to say whatever about whatever race. They'll say it.
Yeah.
No problem. Hey, it's right in front of the guy.
Yeah. I wish we could return to that time of political incorrectness.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Doughbrain actually thinks that. That's the main part. Is it's like he wants to go back to that.
This essay in particular is about the words that aren't offensive to use. It's about the words you use when you're not.
Now,
trying
to be fair,
so
is Chuck. Anyway, sorry, continue.
Yeah, these are the words that you're not necessarily trying to be racist, but you are definitely racist if you use these words.
More,
and
unintentional. But for him, it is intentional. But that's kind of like the subject.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. So people in his life, people he knows personally, have told him that he should not be using this word. And people who have read his writing, people in the public have told him, please do not do this. And this is the hill he's willing to die on, really.
Yeah. Here,
and he's like, hell yeah, I'm going to say it.
Yeah. So he uses it because, God, where is it? Okay, yeah. I prefer the term Negro because it relates to the admittedly vague terms generally used by scientists to differentiate the three largest racial groups: Caucasoid, Mongoloid, and Negroid. So,
I think he means eugenicists.
Right, so he is a race scientist.
Caucasoid. I've heard that word, but never in relation to Mongoloid.
Yeah, which is definitely an offensive term as
also a word you shouldn't use.
There are three kinds of people.
Yeah, what was the third?
Yeah, Caucasoid, Mongoloid, and I mean, it feels awful to say this word. Like, I don't think it's like technically it's Negroid. Like, God, that's such it's ugly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I've heard that, but only in the context of like a real racist shit.
Yeah, right. It's
100%. Yeah,
this is
just
like the skull shape shit.
Yeah, he says. For one thing, African American is now ridiculously overused to denote any Negroid person, regardless of nationality.
He says that word
so he says like
many times. Negroid.
Frequently. So basically his issue is, and maybe this was whenever this was published in the late 90s or whatever, if African American was the preferred term versus black, he talks about how like Naomi Campbell is Jamaican and British, and she's referred to as African American. So he like gets hung up on these weird technical, like, where are they actually from though? He also says, I once had a girlfriend who was a Negro, born in Trinidad, raised in England, but an American citizen who had purposely acquired an American accent. She called herself West Indian. So why are you calling her a Negro, you asshole?
Right.
Like, what the fuck?
All I said there was, I don't believe you. That was my note for that one.
I can see why she broke up with you. Jesus.
Yeah, how are you not married to her?
If she existed. So anyway, he gets really upset that there are different organizations with different names, like the NAACP or the Congressional Black Caucus. Like who of the Negroid race gets to choose the preferred term for the next 20 years. Yeah, basically. It's absolutely disgusting. He says, by my estimate, the next groundswell of Negroes demanding to be called something new will occur around the year 2020. Will there be an exploratory committee appointed a couple of years before that? And then he says, I can imagine the buttons and bumper stickers that will be available for people to promote the new term. And then he just like lists a bunch of like creepy. I don't even want to read these.
You don't have to.
The first one's not so bad.
We've got some good clips already. You know, we can.
Yeah. One example is like, color me Ebonic, that kind of thing.
Right. So he comes up with these slogans like, imagine if they wanted to be called this. They might come up with a catchy slogan like this. And it's like, dude, you are just a white guy. Like this, you don't need to worry about any of this. This isn't your concern, man. Leave them alone.
Yeah. We get it. You can come up with a lot of things that you think they should want to be called. And then he says
like a bit where it's like, oh yeah, no one would ever want to call you, you know, small penis man. They'd never want to do that. They'd never want to say your penis is tiny. That'd be ridiculous. You know, like one of those types of.
Yeah.
That's basically what he's doing.
Yeah.
He says like, this issue reminds him of small children who insist on being called by a different name every day. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. I'm going to continue with that. At first, you humor them. Finally, you get sick of it and say, grow up. This is how he thinks of black people, as small children who he tells to grow up. What a prick.
And he's certainly not going to respect the terms that they want to use to describe themselves. Absolutely not. He's decided what he's going to call them.
Yeah.
As a man who like says he loves language and like, you know, should understand that language evolves and preferred terms evolved, and like truly the least amount of work you can do is refer to people the way that they have told you they want to be referred to. And it's not like no one has told him this is fucked up. He's like doubling down on how he should be able to do it.
Yeah.
I also thought this was really revealing when he says non-Negroid Americans who ape the mannerisms and lifestyles of other races or ethnic groups are generally treated with amused toleration, with admiration if they do it artistically. What the fuck does he mean? Like a
white
minstrel
rappers?
show? What are you talking about?
He's talking about rap.
Yeah.
Okay. Vanilla Ice.
Yeah, deeply respected.
And like, I mean, I think it would be interesting. I mean, not interesting at all. I'm curious what his takes are on, the trans situation, because I'm willing to bet that it's another one. Oh, I already know who you are. I'm already making that judgment.
Yeah.
Yep. It's exactly the same.
He also thinks that people like Tiger Woods should refer to their racial mixture as Heinz 57 varieties. Like, I cannot tell you.
Shouldn't white people be doing that too by the same logic?
Oh my gosh.
Well, he to getting into that a little bit, Negro isn't a perfect term, I'll grant. Virtually no American Negro is pure Negroid. Yeah, pure. That's a word you want to be using in this discussion.
Well, first off, let's go back, and the terms themselves are racist. Like, even before we get to that it not being right. And
yeah. Nearly all have Caucasoid blood, and many have a lot of it. Many eagerly claim American Indian (Mongoloid) blood. That's not what I thought that word meant, by the way. Whether they have it or not.
No.
So do many white Americans, and people like me who can't possibly get away with it because we're so white we're practically blue, usually feeling a pang of regret. I think he's claiming he has Native American blood right there.
I think he said, like, he knows that he's white and he feels bad that he is white. Like, he wishes he could be another ethnic group, but
he wants to be able to say
it. After he says this stuff about like, oh my God, Alan.
That's probably what it boils down to.
Honestly, then he could say, oh no, we're called Negro, actually. But he says nearly all American Negroes, they're not pure Negroids. They have Caucasoid blood, and many have a lot of it. Well, why do you think that is, Joseph Doughbrain? Like,
right.
because of
How'd it
fucking
get there?
slavery and rape and like murder. And it's just like, why don't you acknowledge that? Like, the least you can fucking do is use the term that they prefer.
Right.
Fucking monster.
Yeah. A lot to unwrap there.
Yeah. Crazy essay. Like, wow, man.
I mean, we did think Todd Blodgett was bad, but returning to this, it's like it's the same stuff but worse.
Yeah. He is a worse guy, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I don't think Todd Blodgett is, a good guy, but like, when you compare him, when you compare the turds,
Yeah. Yeah.
Should we get into the next hate crime of an essay?
I think we've talked enough about Joe's race science. Now we can talk about his
fuck.
exploration of sexuality comes next.
Oh, you guys ready for some nuanced takes?
God, yeah.
It literally on Wikipedia. Sorry, just had to do a little Wikipedia, and it says it's an obsolete racial classification.
Yeah, of
it
course.
Says obsolete right on
right
on Wikipedia.
Just like Joe's beloved pocket squares.
Obsolete. That's some Jesse Thorne shit. We're done. We're past that.
The next one's called
You're Here, You're Queer, Whatever.
Yep. This is an essay in which Joe briefly pretends he's not a homophobe before revealing his true feelings.
Yeah, where he literally says, actually, I am a homophobe for a particular type of gay person.
Yeah,
a gay person who does not behave exactly like I do as a straight man.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with homosexuality unless they act gay around me.
Yeah.
I don't have any problem with the homos unless they're sucking my dick. Then we got a real problem. Well, I don't know why they all keep doing it, but it happens.
Yeah.
It won't stop happening.
Straight men of a certain age love to
the
say
classic
that.
onion thing. Yeah, and like, oh, I'm totally fine with them as long as they don't try to hit on me.
Yeah.
Nope.
There's a lot of interesting stuff about, like, in this essay, what the masculinity prison that Joe is a long time inmate within.
Yeah.
Stella, is that a thing that ladies do? Is that a thing that ladies do where they're like, I'm not gay, but...
No, I think women are all kind of gay.
Representative
thing,
of all
right?
women.
I think...
It's like the opposite. Instead of it being like, I'm not gay, but... And then, like, saying that I'm not gay. It's like, I'm not gay, but I would. Okay.
I don't know, Alan.
Sorry to put you on the spot, Stella. I don't mean to.
No. That's okay. I haven't really thought about it.
I have noticed, like, women do seem to be a little more comfortable with themselves than men in that regard, in general.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. But you could say that's because, like, straight culture...
The masculine hole that we're just talking about, or box, or whatever you would say.
Yeah.
Okay.
The masculine hole. No, like, I think that women's queerness has been something that, like, through the male gaze has been... Like, women's queerness for the male gaze is more accepted in the mainstream.
Yeah.
Or, like, women, female sexual experimentation, whereas for men, I think it's less... Like, masculinity seems like a lot less inflexible than female sexuality.
Yeah, we're less threatened by women, doing stuff with each other than...
Yeah. And, I mean, yeah, exactly.
And there's also, like, a perversion to it. Like, we like it.
Yeah,
Okay.
like everybody.
I mean, that's just
girl stuff, but only half of them, like only 50% the ladies like the boy stuff.
I mean, that's what you're getting at, right?
And
Is
the
that
boys think it's gross.
with the male gaze, like that's what you're getting at, though, is like we like the male gaze like looks upon
women are like performing.
Yeah.
Yes, like if women's sexuality is done for like the pleasure of a man, like it's fine.
Yeah,
Whereas
that's great. Yeah,
like
we love it.
It's right here.
I think too, like when women act more masculine, and you might consider like if a woman has sex with another woman, like that's masculine behavior. I think women are allowed to kind of subvert gender boundaries more than men are. Like,
yeah.
So a man having sex with a man, like that's not perceived the same way. I think probably mostly by like men.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, guys are the worst.
Yeah, just like loosen up.
Like, look at this Doughbrain guy.
Yeah, this goes to some interesting places. So he starts out talking about the sort of argument between, is homosexuality something you're born with, or is it a choice that you can make later on in terms of your lifestyle? And in typical libertarian fashion, he's sort of like ignoring the whole context around this debate because, obviously to him, well, he claims to him it wouldn't matter anyway. Like, even if it is a choice you're making, like you should be allowed to make that choice. It's not a problem. Like, you should be able to do that. And, I agree. Like, if homosexuality was a choice, it would be a perfectly acceptable choice. But of course, that's not really what's going on when people discuss it. It's like, the people who say it's a choice are saying it's a sin, and fuck you for doing that sin. That's the context. But he pretends that's not the context.
Yeah. He like, I think you really hit the nail on the head where he like divorces he like focuses on these very tiny arguments, like I should be able to say this. And like, technically, if you follow this logical path, it is accurate. And
Yep.
like, he doesn't understand why people get upset about what he's saying. Divorcing this from all context about like the discrimination that until like, I mean, even today it's bad, but until the last like couple decades that has prevented and has led to like the murder of many queer people. So
in terms of like the choice
like
argument,
what he says,
let me just like say one thing here that I found to be like very interesting. But what if it were a choice? Because he accepts that it is clearly something that you're born with or whatever. But he says, but what if it were a choice? Mm-hmm. What if the flames of homo and heterosexuality blazed equally high in each of us, and we each chose to fuel one flame and let the other wane? What would be so bad about that? And I agree. That would be cool.
Inside you there are two flames. I like to keep both fires healthily rolling. Roaring.
That is flame. Kind of by erasure, yeah.
Yeah. To extinguish a flame.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the most offensive part of his essay starts when he starts talking about like what is to him acceptable behavior by queer people.
Yeah.
And what is not. So he says, like, many homosexuals, for whatever reasons, remain chaste all their lives. Many others live heterosexually, never revealing their true inclinations to anyone. Mm-hmm. Well, these aren't choices I would recommend. I would say that these people's reasons were their own, and I could consider it arrogant and impertinent in the extreme to just suggest that they were wrong choices. But guess what he does suggest are wrong choices.
I want to object real quick.
I've been accused of homophobia once or twice. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to object real quick to his assertion that the gay people who chose to remain chaste all their lives or like pretend they're not gay forever, I want to object to him saying these people's reasons were their own. I mean, no, like they live in a deeply
obviously not.
Oppressive society. They didn't just decide, I'm just going to suppress my urges forever until I die. Like, it's not like there's other factors.
That's my choice.
Yeah, there's other factors sort of influencing 100%. That choice.
Yeah.
We live in a society.
Indeed.
We do. I've been accused of homophobia once or twice because I've dared to suggest that engaging in homosexual acts as opposed to homosexual desires is a choice. I don't see how that makes me homophobic.
More than twice.
Yeah, I mean, to that I asked, do you consider your lack of sexual activity a choice?
Yeah, I apologize. Can you what did he say again? Can you read that again? I was busy making my joke that about two.
Oh, he just basically says, I don't see how it makes me homophobic that I've said that engaging in the act, like homosexual acts, as opposed to having those desires is a choice. Like, he's basically saying you control your actions, like you make your choices. So the choice to act on your homosexual desires, that is a choice.
Yes.
Ergo, by your own logic, you have been defeated in the battle.
Right. Does that make you not gay if you don't do stuff?
Well, yeah, you're still gay, like, because you want to, I think, right? But this is something I heard growing up in the church many times, actually, is that it's sort of like as things were becoming more, as, homosexuality and, any orientation was becoming more socially acceptable in, like, the secular world, the church had to kind of adjust its language around the thing. So, like, their little loophole is like, well, yeah, I mean, it's okay for them to be like that inside, but it's still a sin to have sex with a man if you're a man. It's not wrong to be gay, but it's wrong to do gay stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If the balls don't, not gay.
Right.
Yeah, that's what my minister always said.
Yeah.
What kind of church was that?
Go nuts, but.
Are you a Catholic family?
Yeah, it was one of the bad ones. Then he goes on to say,
according to some people, even the slightest reservations about homosexuality, homosexuals, and their behavior, even if those reservations are never expressed, are enough to qualify you as homophobic. So even the slightest homophobic reservations, that means you're homophobic. How ridiculous is that?
So is that like him embracing that?
Well, sort of.
Well, he's basically saying, he's like, that's too, like, everyone is a homophobe then. So stop accusing me of being a homophobe because
everybody else is doing it.
Here's something you've probably heard many times. But to use the definition so broadly debases the currency, so to speak. It cheapens homophobe in the same way that racist has been cheapened over decades to mean anyone shy of a black nationalist. So basically, I've been called homophobic and racist many times, and rather than analyze my own behavior and beliefs, I've decided that those words actually don't mean anything.
He's got gay friends.
He says he doesn't. He says that's one of the reasons that people accuse him of being a homophobe.
It's going to be like a black friend thing.
Yeah, no, he's not even there. He says almost nobody who disapproves of homosexuality is of the extremist stripe. The people who go about with God hates at the F word signs or who support criminalization or suppression of homosexuality are anomalies in modern civilized societies. Is it? That is, societies that aren't based on group psychosis like some Middle Eastern countries. Don't worry, he threw in some anti-Middle Eastern racism.
Yeah, just
great.
Last-minute parenthetical racism.
They ought to respect other people's choices, which is something that he likes when people do for his choice to eat very rare bacteria-filled beef.
Yeah.
This brings me to the concept of gay pride. Oh, sorry, Alan, go ahead.
I was going to say the country he was talking about in the Middle East was Israel.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I thought.
Continue.
Yeah, when I read this earlier, I thought about, should I make that joke?
This is going to be a doozy of an episode.
I didn't mean it.
I feel like this episode is like Song of the South. Like, it should go into a vault and no one should ever hear it. So we've arrived at the concept of gay pride.
Yes.
How do you think Doughbrain feels about it, Alan?
I think that he is very uncomfortable by the sight of people being gay in front of him, near him, or that he has to think about them at all. I think that he doesn't like, or at least like he has to really tell you that he's really freaked out by that.
You're exactly right. There is an exception that he enjoys, and he does go to the gay pride parade to see women's tits because a lot of women bare their breasts.
Yeah.
Where? What time?
No, I think he said fair.
Oh.
No judgment.
This is how he phrases it. I go to the gay pride parade to ogle the topless lesbians. It goes back to that male gaze and, women's queerness thing we were talking about.
Yeah, they're kind of topical there.
Yeah. I had a note for that thing about ogling topless lesbians. I said, you should be forcibly removed from society.
Amen.
I've lived in Iowa City, and I've been around when the gay pride has festivals have been around.
Yeah.
And frankly, I can say that I do not recall that many topless women.
It's different in New York, I think.
Okay, so that's the context is New York.
Yeah,
okay,
I think he wrote this while living there. Yeah.
I'm not, not that impressed.
One time I walked in Pride with my dog, Winnie, and it wasn't too hot of a day. It was pretty warm. And so she did not display ally behavior because halfway through the parade, she had to get into a truck and ride in the truck for the rest of the parade. Oh, also she took a shit in the middle of the parade.
Street?
So Doughbrain says, why should gay pride be celebrated in any way? Why should anyone be particularly proud, or ashamed for that matter, of being homosexual? Why should one's sexual preferences be any more socially significant than one's tastes in food and drink? Well, because until very recently, Joseph Doughbrain, gay people were not allowed to basically acknowledge that they were gay. And it took a lot of in the streets activism, and people have been murdered for being gay. And you think about like the inattention, like the criminal inattention that so many people lost their lives during the AIDS epidemic, and Reagan never said AIDS once, like in a speech. I mean, that's why Joseph Doughbrain, because
he's doing that no context thing again. Logic only.
Yeah.
I don't understand that, just that mindset of like something that doesn't really affect you at all. Like, what difference does it make? It doesn't affect me in any way. I definitely am, I'm sympathetic to that sort of opinion of like, why do I care? But it's like, well, if you don't care, then shut the fuck up.
Yeah, don't write an
essay.
essay.
This is a really long essay.
Yeah, like you wrote a whole thing about it, and like, so you obviously do care.
Yeah.
So what's the big deal?
He goes on. He has a lot of really offensive stuff. He equates gay pride to like, what if it was a festival for potato salad culture instead?
Oh yeah.
It's a really weird analogy.
Yeah.
He deals with a lot of different crazy stereotypes. He says a lot of really creepy stereotypes. And then he says, at a time when so many gay people are demanding to be treated as just folks, particularly on issues such as same-sex marriage and adoption by gay couples, I wonder why so many gay people tend to hold up undesirable or bizarre behavior as particularly commendable. He talks about how an HIV positive gay city councilman, like, why should we care about that? As if like a person who's HIV positive and queer, like being out about their HIV status and their queerness isn't radical.
Yeah. Well, he specifically like says that whoever this candidate was, I forget the name, but basically like he deserves a greater prestige because his private habits are unsanitary and reckless. Like, I mean, people didn't really know like how it was spread for a long time. Like a lot of people got HIV, had no idea like where it was coming from.
Yeah.
Well, people got it from sex and IV drug use, but they also got it from blood transfusions, like...
Also kind of presumptuous to assume that because someone is gay that they are, in lots of relationships and are, constantly fucking like all kinds of different partners and all that shit too.
Yeah.
It's a little weird. I mean, I know there's a stereotype, but at the same time, it's a little much. It's 2022, pal. There's gays. They're
well, I think it was the 90s when he wrote this, but still, I mean, come on, settle down.
Well, now it's now. This is telling him now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, after paragraphs and paragraphs, he says as a few turns of phrases like, hundreds of thousands of gay men were genetically hardwired to start talking like Richard Simmons as soon as they hit puberty, and they really want to talk that way. I mean, stuff like that. Like, the stupidest stereotypes ever. I mean, paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs, and finally he says, now, am I homophobic myself? Yes, I am a little. I'm not proud of it, and I happily put my prejudice aside when I meet a homosexual who doesn't justify it.
Right, yeah. He opened this essay like objecting to being labeled homophobic, and now he's saying, well, yeah, I am, but only against the really gay ones. Like
this bigotry would hold up in a law.
Oh, I do like this one part. So one of my favorite parts of this essay, so he's basically rattling off some of the behavior that makes him uncomfortable, that he says does not reflect well on queer people as a group. And one of those very interesting anecdotes is one time Joseph Doughbrain was peeing in the men's room next to a rather fey coworker who, when I was done and starting out the door, lisped at me, "Wash your hands." Would a straight guy have said that?
Nobody should have, probably.
Yeah,
Joseph Doughbrain posting his L's with his urine-soaked hands.
Yeah.
Like
he thought that would be a W, and yet to the rest of the world, yet again, another example of him being like,
this fucking homo told me to wash my hands after I peed. Can you believe this gay man?
I hate all gay people.
The gay people who tell me to wash my hands are just the worst.
Yeah, and they're so unclean. They're so depraved.
He had a list in the bathroom. He peed right next to me. Can you believe it?
Yeah, and this is the essay where he basically says the reason that, and when he's talking about like the objectionable behavior, he's talking about like gay men specifically, and he says that it's simply a matter like men behave this way because they're weak, unmanly men finding an outlet for their rage at their own ineffectuality. A real man, if he can't help himself and needs to get rid of some rage, goes to a gym and finds a sparring partner or a heavy bag.
He talks about this like not every, but like a lot of gay people are like just constantly berating him and like even like physically assaulting him. And it's like, I don't think that's ever happened to me once, man. Like what? Like what's your problem? What? Like how are you driving all
I've
gay
never
men?
been assaulted by a gay.
Yeah, you're driving every gay person into a rage every time you're near them. Like maybe something is going on. Like maybe you're doing something bad. I don't know.
They're
man.
too attracted. That's what he thinks.
Well, I mean, if he opens his mouth around them, I'm sure they know like how he feels, and like people pick up on vibes immediately. And I mean, it's interesting too that he says every Hispanic person he's ever met has like immediately clocked him and treated him rudely. It's
Yeah.
I mean, I bet they were all like people that he hired.
Like, Joseph Doughbrain, you are the common denominator in all of these equations. And stop saying that these are universal experiences when they are definitely you problems.
Right, yeah. I wash my hands when I'm using a public bathroom, so like...
What compels you to write this stuff down?
Yeah.
Like, why would you do that?
Simply say nothing. Take a big glass of STFU.
Drinky
drink.
Or like have a journal. Like, I mean, I guess that's what a lot of this stuff is. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we've consumed is basically like, I'm writing in my journal and everyone needs to know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I want to point out that he worked at a call center and he had a gay coworker. And according to Joe, this gay coworker had plainly taken a dislike to me because I was a hick from Iowa. And you sure? Are you sure that's why?
And also, like, sometimes you're not friends with your coworkers. Like, dude, it's fine. Like, you don't have to be friends with the guy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The conclusion to this essay is, the gay community demands tolerance, and a fair demand it is. And plenty of gay people set a good example. It's the vocal minorities that perpetuate the stereotypes that keep homophobia alive. So their oppression is their own fault.
Yeah. They inspire hatred of themselves. They inspire hatred in other people.
Right.
Towards themselves.
This is one of the uglier essays in this section. Like,
yeah,
man.
This is disgusting.
I mean, it's been pretty ugly so far. I mean,
yeah. The hits just keep coming.
Okay, the next essay is called "I'm All for Free Speech, But," and it's very boring, so I think we should skip it.
Yeah. Although he does say, as you were saying that there's not much interesting stuff, I just scrolled through it and there's a sentence where he says, "I see nothing wrong with having sex with children."
Oh.
Oof.
Yeah. All right, we should get...
But
we
he's
should,
like...
we should probably give the context there.
He's like making... he's making a comparison to something else. So,
okay, he says
that, like, if someone says, he says, if someone said, "I oppose freedom of speech," to say that in the minds of many who do in fact oppose free speech would be as dangerous as saying, "I see nothing wrong with having sex with children."
I was going to say he's really living up to the libertarian roots, but
yeah, for real.
Have a little bit of credit. Maybe, a little bit.
He definitely knows the age of consent. Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, just real quick, I don't think that saying "I oppose free speech" is as dangerous of a statement as "I see nothing wrong with having sex with children." And I don't think that's very controversial. Like, my position on that. I think one of those is significantly worse to say. Okay, so this next essay, which I think, this is the last one we'll talk about tonight, because the final essay of
thank God,
of this section is called "Working Dirty," and it's not about the Norm Macdonald movie Dirty Work, so it's actually, not really worth talking about. Instead, we're going to end with "The New Victorians," which is an essay. I'm spoiling a little bit here, but this is an essay in which Joe argues it's fine to peep on your neighbors.
Yeah. Yep.
Like drill a hole in the wall and peep?
Well, that's not what happens
it's more
here.
Like
but
if they're sunbathing nude, they're an attractive nuisance, and it's okay if you not only look at them, but you get out your trusty binoculars so you can get a really good peek.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't say I agree. Let's see that in papers.
This starts with the context here is that advice columnist Ann Landers received a letter from a woman who complained that a young boy in her neighborhood was spying on her sunbathing nude in her backyard with binoculars. And Ann Landers thought that it was bad that the kid was doing that. And another person wrote in to say, yeah, that kid, I don't know, maybe he should seek counseling, because that kind of like voyeurism can often be like
it can escalate.
Precursor to other things. You know, you're violating certain boundaries in a way. So like this could be, you know, a bad situation. I mean, it is a bad situation, but it could be more serious than it even appears at first. Yeah.
And Joseph Doughbrain says, if you were handing out free ice cream, would I need counseling for eating some of it? And then he goes on to wax rhapsodic about all the times he's ever been naked. He like talks about how much he loves like skinny dipping. He has this interesting thing where he says, if any boy in my high school gym class had covered up with a towel in the locker room, he'd have been called every kind of sissy in the book.
Yeah.
So he basically says nudity is good. Being a little bit horny when other people are nude is natural. Like,
I know we've been recording for a long time, but I want to make sure we talk a little bit specifically about this stuff. You brought up the ice cream thing. If someone's handing out free ice cream, do I need counseling because I accept it? Now, I think a more proper analogy to the woman sunbathing thing would be...
Oh, you don't think a woman's body is ice cream?
I don't. But I think a better analogy here between the ice cream and the nudity is if someone is eating ice cream in their own backyard, do you then have a right to hop the fence and lick their ice cream? And you don't. It's their ice cream.
No. That's a perfect analogy. Yeah.
And he's saying like what would this counselor even tell this kid? Like what's he doing wrong? That there are more politically correct ways for him to get a boner?
That's what counselors do though, actually.
Yeah.
That's cognitive behavioral therapy.
Anyone who tells me that I'm not
boner therapy.
Not allowed to peep on the women in my neighborhood, that's just PC bullshit to me.
I think, Alan, we've given him a migraine.
He's not enjoying this.
What would compel you to write about that?
Yeah.
Again, I just don't. I don't get that.
Yeah.
Like he's really upset about all this stuff, and he has to get it out. And it's all of the same tired, like old man. Shakes his fist at the sun because, because he's old and gotta yell at it because, hey, have you guys heard that it's not like it used to be?
With a heavy mix, like with a heavy dose of "and boys will be boys" thrown in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's very much the patriarchal, like, insanity.
Yeah. I can't let this go unspoken either. He says the sunbathing woman is, in effect, walking around with a sign saying, I hate N-words. He writes out the N-word in full here. That's like Die Hard, right? The Bruce Willis wearing that poster board? Yeah. So the sign from... the sign from Die Hard 3. The sunbathing woman is walking around with the sign from Die Hard 3 and then complaining when someone punches her in the nose. No, I don't think that is actually the same thing.
I think in his mind, this woman is like out and about. Like
she's asking for it. She's inviting it. Yeah.
Or like
she's in a public space.
Yeah, he's like in a public space, like, hey, everybody, check this out.
Yeah.
And he's like, across the way with his binocs, like, hey,
that's the thing. Like, I the binoculars add an element to it. Like, I was thinking about it, and I'm like, yeah, if you are nude in your yard, if someone can see you and they look, like, maybe the onus is on you to not be naked where, like, a child can see you.
Sure.
But the binoculars add an element of,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like he is a kid, so I mean, there's some, you can understand a little bit a kid like doing something wrong, but it is like you have to say like, no, you shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah. Maybe she should not. Maybe she should put on a bikini.
Maybe we don't need to litigate the story, but at the same time, I think it might be helpful to understand the situation.
Yeah,
because like I get it. Of like, you're a kid who got binocs, you're gonna look. Why wouldn't you?
Maybe he was burdened
Yeah, if you're a grown-ass person and you find a child doing that, and you look out, and then you take a look-see through, and you're like, whoa. You probably tell the kid, probably don't do that. And then you probably go to that lady and go, hey, just so you know, you might want to cut that out. I can see that.
We have a perfect view of your yard.
There might be a thing going.
Yeah.
There are kids in this neighborhood. We would appreciate if maybe you covered up. Yeah.
And you should get that mole checked out.
Yes. I have been viewing you at 20 times magnification. And
it's time to go to the dermatologist.
Stella alluded to this. He recalls something from when he was a teenager, when he went to the beach with 3 or 4 high school girls, and they were all nude. And I was like, yeah, I bet you think about that a lot, man.
When would a woman ever be naked around him is what I want to know.
This time 35 years ago. That may have been... I mean, that probably hasn't happened many times since.
It's beyond belief to me. I'm sorry. I'm calling BS on that shit.
Well, it's interesting because he's it was not a sexual situation, even though I was extremely horny. So these girls thought of him as so benign and impotent that they were like, let's go swimming. Oh, we didn't bring our suits. Come on, Jodo.
Yeah. And there's 3 of them?
3 or 4.
It's hard enough with one, but...
That,
yeah, so we're talking 6 boobs.
That's actually the least believable part of this, is that he says 3 or 4 high school girls. No. If this really happened, you remember exactly who was there and how many of them.
Yeah.
He'd have it written down.
Yeah.
He's a prolific documentarian.
I did like the part where he says, so as we're romping, nude as a jaybird, all together, frolicking, there's a, note of horniness in the air. They notice that someone is watching them, and they're like, ha ha ha, don't they know that they could join us and get a much closer look at our lithe, naked bodies?
Yeah.
They don't have to spy on us. What is this world that he has created?
Yeah. They refer to him as this guy. It's very non-specific, but I have to imagine it was an adult spying on, underage kids' nudity.
It was definitely his demon friend who emerged from his lair.
Writing about women like that is not how any woman I've ever met is like.
Yeah. Oh, someone's peeping on us from the bushes? Haha, I don't care. I wish he was closer to us.
That's cool.
Come on over.
Yeah. That's a real thing that women I know definitely would think when they are naked.
Well, part of the point of the essay is that this is the way things used to be. So I think it's because we're so much younger than him that none of the women we know were like this.
Women these days.
Our moms, though, this is exactly what they like.
Yeah. Stella, you also already mentioned the locker room thing, but I do want to read this full paragraph.
Yes, please do.
These days in the men's locker room at my health club, I observe that few men walk to and from the showers without towels draped around their waists. I have even seen guys go into a shower stall with their shorts on, close the curtain, reach an arm out to hang their shorts on a nearby hook, take their shower, reach out for a towel off behind the curtain, reach back out for the undershorts, and only then emerge from the stall.
Do you know why everyone in your locker room wears as much clothing as possible? It's because you watch them like a hawk as they shower.
He watched the whole process.
Let me just.
He's out there hanging hog. Yeah. He's furiously taking notes the entire time. Meanwhile, his full
about
hog
all these
is
naked
hanging.
guys.
I didn't even touch a towel when I went into the locker room.
I was naked, and I was looking at it.
And I air dried.
I was watching the shower.
I stayed there for hours until I was fully dry, and I watched every man who came in, and I observed their behavior going in and out of the showers.
You're telling me I can't bring my binoculars to the men's locker room anymore and eat my ice cream? Like, what the fuck?
I watched them. I observed them.
They call me the Watcher, baby. So I know you don't want to spend too much time on Working Dirty, but I just wanted to note one sentence that has really, really, really not aged well.
It's probably the same one I thought
of. So basically, Alan, the premise of this essay is that, like, it's not a positive thing for comics to, like, avoid blue material. Like, he takes issue with people saying, like, oh, they're such a clean comic. Like, that's a cool, like, that's notable and praiseworthy. He says that a lot of comics are good at, like, sort of body humor. But then he says some comedians, Bill Cosby, for instance, simply don't seem to find sex an interesting topic on which to build their jokes.
That one is really something.
He certainly found sex interesting in other ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of thankful that Bill Cosby is not a dirty comic.
Yeah, no kidding. I guess this will be a good way for us to end the episode. I do have another video clip where they discuss the New Victorians, which was the nudity essay.
I just want to say one thing about how he talks about how the sitcom All in the Family used to imply that people were shitting by having, like, a toilet flushing sound effect, and I thought that would be cute if you added one here.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, now let's play the clip.
Okay, yeah. All right, so here's another clip from Yale Cohn's interview of Joe regarding this book.
One of my favorite essays in here, it was called The New Victorians, and how in perhaps more innocuous, how we eat, to whom we sleep with, that kind of stuff. There's not just people who have elected to take a perhaps healthier path on their own, but seem to go out of their way and glean great satisfaction from making sure that anyone who doesn't live that way is perennially, admonished and chastised.
Oh, we have become a nation of finger waggers.
What is going on? What's informing that, and how do these people feel that that's helpful, necessary, or just?
I don't think that they believe it's helpful or necessary or just. I think that it comes out of a desire to bully and harass other people. Let's face it, we are not nice. Human beings are not, as a rule, nice. A lot of us like to make life tough for other people. We like to bully, we like to harass, we like to get in somebody's face just for the pleasure of doing it.
And so this was
oh my God.
In relation to the article about the young boy peeping on a nude woman in his neighborhood. Some people just want to get up in your business about your behavior. My God.
My favorite essay. That's what I got from that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, what is Yale Cohn's accent? He sounds so pompous when he says, like, New Victorians. Like,
yeah, that's the smart
the TV
affect.
accent.
Yeah. The how to sound smart.
Yeah, this is a masterpiece theater.
Yeah, I mean, I love it, but at the same time, he really gives Doughbrain a lot of credit that I find that is giving Mr. Doughbrain here exactly what he wants, which is amazing to see that he has exactly what he wants on those clips. Like, exactly. Yeah. He's like, I'm on a TV show. And yet he still looks unhappy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a miserable bastard.
Yeah. We will, in the future in this series, see more clips from that interview with Yale Cohn, so look forward to that. Next time on Doughbrain Book Club, we will be discussing the section of this book called Growing Up. So hopefully a lot more stories about Joseph's childhood. Those are my favorite.
I am very sorry for the next person who participates.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to tap out. This has been too much for me.
Man, that would be horrible.
Stella, you're going to be a Doughbrain expert.
That would be horrible if I did these like alone. Can you imagine how deranged that would be?
Is a professor of Doughbrain studies.
Well, Alan, thanks for jumping on here with us to hear about some of the
no
crazy
problem. Sorry
shit.
I was late, everyone. Not Justin. Stella, I apologize.
I apologize if my lateness offends you.
Yeah. Oh, how dare you! I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, and it's wrong that you were like that.
Stop inciting these feelings of hatred in me against you.
Yeah, this is your act.
Yeah. All right, everyone, enjoy the Madonna that I put at the end of this episode.
Hell yeah.
Nice.